All right, good. So let's go on. So the first part again is dealing with normal vision and visual function. So this is a picture of the eye, and on the left is basically the cornea, the front of the eye. So that's the part of the eye that can't be dry. So you could imagine the lights and the images are coming in from my right or your left, coming across the screen, and the images need to hit the back of the eye in this little dent. It's a special area called the macula or the fovea. And the reason that visual information needs to come in this way is because this is actually, that little area is your central vision. So if the information comes in anywhere else, it's part of your peripheral vision. And so being very, very precise, meaning having good light coming in. So it's not affected by dry eyes or little something that's unclear on the cornea, or the cataract. This is the lens. You could have a cataract develop that causes light to be scattered as it's coming through. So we need clear light path hitting the back of the eye in order for the eye to capture that information. And what I have here in schematics, which is a little, I know you can't see my pointer back there, but the diagram on the right is actually the layers of the retina sort of blown up, so you can see that there are different neurons that are important in processing that visual information. So information comes in through the front all the way to the back of the eye. So we made it as far as the eye. And then after it gets through the eye, which are the two eyeballs in the front, the eye connects to the brain through the optic nerve. And then it goes through this complicated pathway that you don't really need to worry about, but the visual information travels all the way to the back of the brain. So literally this is one of the longest pathways in the brain because it has to go all the way from the eyeball to the back of the head. And it's the back of the head, the visual cortex, where the information is interpreted. So if it doesn't make it there, it's never going to be interpreted. So that's why the entire system needs to be intact for things to work out. This is a MRI scan, so it's an image of the brain. And I want to just point out on the left side, your left side is the nose, and on the right is the back of the head. And so the eyeballs are somewhere in the front here. This is right through the center, so the eyeballs are on either side. That's why you don't see it. It's basically through the nose. And the visual pathway goes from the front all the way to the back. And what I want you to see is this red circle right in the middle. The midbrain is one of the key places where the neurons are affected in PD. So the substantia nigra, the dopamine neurons, they live in the midbrain. So that's actually deep in the center of your brain, in the middle of the brain stem. So if you think about the stem of a flower and the brain sort of over it, you have to go through that area. So you could imagine that it's actually quite important for PD in terms of what's going on, especially with eye movement. And this might be hard to see. What I did was I overlaid a diagram of the eye with the muscles and the connections with the brain stem. And there are sort of different Roman numerals that says 3, 4, and 6. So those are the 3 nerves that control the eye muscles. And midbrain is right in the middle of all of that. So that area is literally the center of eye movement. So it's not at all surprising that people with PD would have difficulty with eye movement. That's sort of the overall summary. Now I'm going to break it down to 2 parts. First part is the vision itself. How does visual information get in? And then the second part is the eye movement. So these two work together. So the eyes move, so the retina is lined up with whatever you want to see. Okay, and then it's held still with 2 eyes perfectly lined up so you can interpret that information. So it's actually sort of complex. So let's break it down. So with vision, you have the 2 eyes in the center. And what I did was I have a picture of the inside of the eye in the background there. And if we could actually dim maybe just the front lights, that probably would help a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, if anyone sees your neighbor is falling asleep, just let me know, okay? All right, so basically through the eyes, and essentially it's as if I'm facing you, okay? The eye on your left is the right eye, okay? So right eye, left eye, okay? So what you see is, this is the optic nerve right here. So again, the optic nerve is what connects the eye to the brain. So that's it, it's information highway, okay? It's not the most important visual area in the eye. It's actually the fovea or the macula where you get your central vision. The optic nerve is the connection. So let me just show you a little bit more here. When you see an eye doctor, you may get a visual field test. This is a test where you put your head into this little chin rest, and there's a bowl that there's a light that flashes on and off. When you see it, you push a button. So that's a way to study how much of the world are you capturing. So for example, if you can't see the left side of the world, the left side of that image on the bottom would be, this left half would be dark. Okay, so this shows people that you can see the left, the right, the top, and the bottom part of each eye. So that's tested separately. So the center of the field is in the center of the cross. That's the center of your vision. You really only see what's in the center of your vision. There's a tiny little window. Everything else is peripheral vision, and your vision is not as good. So you could test essentially the center of your vision, which corresponds to this dark area here called the macula. And there's this area called the blind spot. So the blind spot is actually made by the optic nerve. So this one, there's a hole that has to basically let that information out to the brain. So it's a area that we typically ignore. You don't usually see your blind spot because it's fairly small and you just sort of fill in and you ignore it. But I want you to understand the concept of there's a special part of the retina that's the center of your vision called the macula, and then the optic nerve is actually sort of the blind spot. So you have one of these in each eye. So let me illustrate this. Here's a picture of Stanford University. Hopefully, if you haven't visited before, you should really make a trip. This is called the oval, or sort of the main part of the campus. So I'm going to overlay a visual field. And so you're looking right in the center of the Memorial Church. So when you look, and this is actually the right eye that's looking at it. When you look at the Memorial Church, you are not really seeing anything in the blind spot, but you sort of fill in anyway. And what you can see are, you can see details in the center of your vision, but in the periphery, you may just sort of get a feeling for what it looks like. So the visual field test is meant to assess how well you're seeing the world. So that's the center of your vision, that's the blind spot where you don't see anything. All right, so another just picture of what I said. The macula, it doesn't look that impressive, that's why people just sort of forget about it. But this is actually the most important area. So if you have macular degeneration, for example, it affects your central vision. And so this is the area that will be affected. And here's the optic nerve, which is the connection that's coming out of the eye, going to the brain. So basically, the eye and the brain, they work together. First, the eyes move to put whatever it is you want to see in the special part called the macula. And then the brain interprets that information. It goes from the eye to the optic nerve to the brain. All right. So for an exam, this is what we do. We measure things like visual acuity. I'm sure you've all read those letters that they put on the wall, and they get smaller and smaller until it drives you crazy. But that's what we have to do. We have to see what is your very best vision. We test your pupil by shining light on it. We check the visual field, which we sort of talked about. We looked at the eye movement. We look at the optic nerve and the retina. We may also do a neurological exam and a medical exam depending on if there's a reason to do that. So this is an instrument called a slit lamp where we can look into the front of the eye. So you can look at the cornea, the pupil, is there any cataract? So it's actually sort of a, we tend to do a very comprehensive evaluation because we need to look for every reason why you can't see. And we look into your eyes using different instruments, and what we see is on the bottom left there, the optic nerve of the retina. So, so that was vision, okay? Light is captured by the retina in a special area, connects to the brain through the optic nerve, and the brain interprets, yes, you know, that's a red apple, or that's a blue sky. Now, the eyes need to move to get you lined up in the right place. So that's eye movement. So again, looking at Stanford University, we started here. So you're looking in the center. When you move your eyes, your center is shifted. Okay, so now the right part of the screen is in the center of your vision, and the blind spot is further out. So you make these very quick eye movements called saccades continuously. You can literally walk into a room and within a second know an overall view of what you're seeing. And part of that is because you can make these very quick saccades. And sometimes if you're watching a movie and there's like a man and a woman looking closely at each other and their eyes are moving back and forth, they're actually making eye movements going from eye to eye, looking at the other person, you know, just to see what they're thinking and trying to read into their thoughts. So let's talk about eye movements a little bit. The eyes move because it's being pulled back and forth. So there's 6 muscles per each eye, and there are 3 nerves. So you don't really have to remember what they are, but essentially you can move the eyes up to one side. This one is the left eye, so it's actually moving the eye outwards, moving the eyes down, or toward the nose. So there are different movements, and they're controlled by 3 different nerves and 6 different muscles. So when we look to see someone who has an eye movement issue, we always check, is there a muscle problem? Is there a nerve problem? And this is a scan of the eyes, so you can sort of see how the muscles are attached to the eye. So the ball in the front or on the top are the eyes, and then the muscles are color-coded in the brown. And so you can see it's a little bit like a pulley system. It's pulling left and right. And the eyes need to work together in order to pull your eyes left and right. So those are the muscles. Then we're now back to the brain stem. So I mentioned before that this is one of the most important areas for PD because that's the center of eye movement control. So the nerves connect and they originate from the brain stem. And then there's obviously a brain on top of that. So there are lots and lots of brain areas that are important for eye movement control. And another way of looking at all these areas that are highlighted in the brain is to look at sort of the network. It's like a command. If you could think about it in terms of engineering terms or whatnot, but someone says, move your eyes. Someone, you know, usually in the frontal lobe. And this area that's circled in red, those are the brain areas that are affected in PD. So you can see that it's practically in the center of all eye movement control. And then eventually it goes down to the bottom to the brainstem, which connects to the muscle and the nerve. And so there's a lot going on. I have a question there.
Yeah. Are there any kinds of exercises that can be done to improve eye movement?
Good question. So the answer is yes. And the supplementary answer is you're already doing it. So you're moving your eyes constantly, just like the heart. Even when you're sleeping, the eyes are moving. And so you don't need to spend a lot of money or do some, you know, really fancy exercises. But the important thing to remember is to stay active, to keep using your eyes and keep using your brain. So if you like doing puzzles, I would keep doing puzzles. If you like taking a walk, I would keep doing that, and just pay attention. Use your eyes and use your brain. The more you use it, the more you're likely to preserve their function. So, good question.